Championships, wrestling companies, all of them have about 50 million of them these days. Far too many in most cases. WWE currently has 16 active on the roster. That's removing the speed titles, which seemingly have gone the way of my hairline since the Twitter series was cancelled. Today, we're going to run through every single championship in NXT, Raw and SmackDown, talk about who the current champion is and who should beat them. There's 16 in total, and we're going to start with NXT. This is the NXT North American Women's Championship, currently held by Sol Ruca. In my view, if you're going to pass it on to somebody else in the near future, it should probably be Blake Monroe. She's been very, very present on NXT television since jumping ship from AEW. She's largely working the same kind of character she was over there, just without working with Toni Storm, obviously. Instead, she's been primarily mixing it up with Jordynne Grace. But once that storyline has elapsed, I'm not sure if I'm putting Blake all the way to the top of the women's division just yet. I'm probably having her down in NXT for a little while longer. That's why I think the North American Championship makes a lot of sense. And it's on a babyface now, so you might as well put it on one of the strongest heels in the division if you're not going to do the Zarya turn anytime soon and maybe she wins it. But for now, Blake Monroe, next North American Champion. Next up, the Men's North American Championship. And look, the feud between Javon Evans and Ethan Page, it is kind of elapsed. It's over. They had their final match, all of that good stuff. But is it ever truly over in the land of professional wrestling? These things can be picked up again at the drop of a dime. I think that Ethan Page has quietly been one of the most successful AEW to WWE pipeline transfers. He's done a really good job down in NXT. We know these two have excellent in-ring chemistry. If you want to pick that rivalry back up at any point, you can do it just whenever you wish, and I think this makes a lot of sense. Javon is an outrageous wrestler for somebody of his young age. You could argue that maybe he should go up to the main roster sometime in the near future. I would keep him here just a little bit longer. You've got time with Mr. Evans, and this would represent, in my view, the next logical step in his development. The NXT Tag Team titles are a little bit trickier. You obviously have Hank and Tank with the belts at the moment. They won them in a very sentimental victory at WrestleMania weekend. A surprising result for many, but like a big cathartic victory nonetheless. NXT, ideally, you'd want like a heel unit to come in and take the belts off of the working man babyface tag team. There's not an abundance of excellent choices out there, I don't think, but Dark State, obviously, they've had their presence all over the show. One thing about them is they don't really win a whole lot of the time in big spots. So at some point the big heel team has to win a few times to kind of make them look a bit dominant and a bit scary and a bit like they're actually taking over. So while maybe this stable still has a couple of things to tighten up in terms of its overall presentation, I don't really see a better choice currently on the roster unless they pull somebody down from the main roster. Jacy Jayne was a surprising NXT Women's Champion when she won it a few months ago. In fact, it was one of the biggest shocks in terms of title changes we've seen in a while, but she's done a really good job, and it's a reward for quietly being one of the most improved wrestlers in all of WWE over the past few years. If you think like where she started off, where she was like the third person in Toxic Attraction, now she's carved something for her own, and she's done a good job with it. She's, of course, the Knockouts champion, the TNA Knockouts champion at the moment as well. And it's a former TNA Knockout I'm going with to dethrone her as the NXT Women's Champion. Jordynne Grace, she's been one of the best in her scene for years and years and years. She was a real vanguard standard bearer type in TNA, and I think she's that now for NXT as well. She's currently tangling up with Blake Monroe and their rivalry and all the things that entails, but once that's done, I think that Jordynne should win that feud, and I think she should go on to challenge Jacy Jayne for the women's title and finally win it. She is exactly the kind of person you build the top of a division around, and she doesn't even need to hold it for all that long. Look at Stephanie Vaquer as a recent example, or Julia as well, of shorter NXT Women's Championship reigns before going up to a Raw or SmackDown. Jordynne Grace is the one, and she deserves more props because she's great. So the NXT Men's Championship, or just the NXT World title, whatever we're calling it, is next. Femi, the current champion, everyone loves him, he's great. He could go up to the main roster tomorrow and everything would be fine. It's kind of hard to pick a suitable person to come in and dethrone him. I think a lot of people might go with Joe Hendry. Very popular dude, obviously. Probably going to end up in WWE once his TNA contract expires. But I'm going with another TNA guy. Although he won't be a TNA guy by the time this happens. I'm going with Mike Santana. Now, this is dependent on his contractual situation. Maybe he's got a TNA deal for 5 years or something. Who knows? He can stay there and be great. But he's, I think, going to end up in WWE at some point. Look, the guy, it's a great story. He bet on himself. He asked for his AEW release several times until he was granted it. He wasn't getting what he wanted from that company. He's gone to TNA and House of Glory and all these indies and stuff like that. Worked extremely hard, gotten himself into incredible shape, and is now producing the best work of his career as a singles wrestler. It's pretty inspiring stuff, honestly. I thought TNA should have belted him the other month in the triple threat with Trick Williams, but it didn't end up happening. He's not going to win that belt anytime soon. It doesn't look like. So hey, why don't we throw this TNA WWE working relationship a bone on the favor of TNA? Put the belt on Mike Santana. I think that'd be really good. Okay, we're on to the main roster now and the Women's Tag Team Championships. Look, I think they should ride this Alexa Bliss Charlotte Flair thing for as long as it's worth. It's gotten really over. Charlotte got an incredible pop in particular at Evolution. And when you consider some of the backlash she received in the build to WrestleMania with her program with Tiffany Stratton, this is really an impressive turnaround. And I think the thing about these thrown together odd couple tag teams is that it's easy to be cynical about them, but sometimes they just get over. And this is a good example of that. What I would do is actually put the belts back on the Judgment Day at some point. Doesn't need to be today, tomorrow, or even in a month. But at some point, that's the move I would make. Roxanne Perez and Raquel Rodriguez. I would do this before Liv Morgan has recovered from her injury and returned to TV. I think it's a really neat little story bit if Roxanne is Raquel's partner as the tag team champions when Liv comes back, because it gives Liv another chip on her shoulder about Roxanne, gives her another reason to pursue that babyface turn and ask questions about Dominic and all of that stuff. So from a story standpoint, I just think it gives them the most that they could possibly sink their teeth into. Just, ride out the Alexa and Charlotte thing for a while longer, because it's really over. World Tag Team Champions, the Raw belts, they're currently held by, they're not sheep. They're held by Finn Balor and JD McDonough of the Judgment Day, of course. Look, to me, this was the easiest entry on the entire video. Seth Rollins, his stablemates, Braun Breaker and Bronson Reed should be tag team champions. They should beat everybody in 4 minutes. They should crush the competition until there is a babyface tag team that you want to build up to that level to finally dethrone them. They should get the classic monster push, just a tag team version of it. These guys are at their absolute best when they are wrecking fools, rather than just being henchmen. Look, they're good henchmen too, don't get me wrong, but I think they deserve a bit of shine in the tag division. It's a modern twist on the Road Warriors format. Not a lot of companies have gone in on that style of tag wrestling over the years, right? Over the past few decades. It's not really in style, so it's a little bit of a risk, but these dudes are so awesome together. When they're working their heat angles and they're beating up Roman Reigns and taking his shoes, I think that's when they really shine. I think they should flatten these dudes, take the belts, beat everybody for a long time, and hold on to them forever. Who cares? Just eternal champions. WWE Tag Team Championships, the SmackDown belts, currently held by the Wyatt Six. They were, I think, maybe a little bit surprising winners in the TLC match at SummerSlam. A lot of people were picking other teams like the Street Profits, Fraxium, Morrissey, Machine Guns Andrade, and Rey Fenix, of course. I'm going with Fraxium to dethrone the Wyatt Six at the moment. Look, there's like 20 members of the Wyatt Six, so they're hard to get the better of, obviously. But look, this to me has been the best tag team in American wrestling for the past pretty much since they formed 2 or 3 years. They're a tremendous tandem. There's no need to rush with them at all, so you could easily hold off on it. Look, if you want to put the Motor City Machine Guns here or something like that, I'm all on board. I'm totally here for it. But I literally have just picked these guys because they're my favorites. So that's why they're here. But look, they're an awesome tandem. I think they have an interesting dynamic to where they sometimes have these lapses in story. They have these miscommunications. They hit each other every now and then accidentally or whatever, but it's not leading to a breakdown. It's quite refreshing to have that and not think, they're going to split and feud and all of this stuff. They're just a great team. I think they're going to be together for a long, long time. So why not dethrone the Wyatts? Let's talk about the Women's United States Championship next, currently held by Julia, of course. I think that this belt It's not really quite had the same level of story investment as the Intercontinental title, which we'll talk about in just a little minute here. Could probably do that kind of Becky Lynch type reign from somebody. I've gone down a completely different route here, right? And this is definitely the most off-piste of the picks. Candice LeRae in here. Why the hell not? Look, she's been in WWE for a long, long time. Rarely has she been given the opportunity to show how good she really is. And she's great in her roles, whether it's seconding for Nia Jax or Ciampa Gargano or The Way down in NXT. She's good at all of that stuff. But some people really need to go back and watch their Candice LeRae tapes, man. If she's given an opportunity and she's given a story that will allow her to grow with this belt and stuff, I think she can surprise a lot of people. Now look, this would require some work to make it mean something, right? We saw the Zelina Vega title change, felt a bit random, felt a bit, well, okay. Even though I think she did a pretty good job by the end, but you need to build up to these things believably. So this would take a little while because Candice hasn't been booked the strongest throughout her time in WWE, but I think even today she's extremely underrated. And as a match, this would be really great. So do the thing. Next, we have the Women's Intercontinental Championship. This thing has benefited immensely from Becky Lynch being involved in the scene. She's done a lot to raise the profile of the belt, Lyra Valkyria as well, through their feud, even though I think their last match was not the strongest of the rivalry, but from start to finish, you have to look at this and go, does the belt feel more important since Becky arrived? Yes. Does Lyra feel more important since Becky arrived? Yes, I would say so as well. So the third person in that story is obviously Bayley. And what I would do here is a different kind of run, right? I would be looking to emulate what you've done with Becky, but with Bayley, and use a heel in the Lyra position, right? So you've elevated the babyface in the division. Now Bayley, babyface, all of that stuff. Why not raise the next young up-and-coming heel opposite her? So what I would do with a view to maybe crowning a Roxanne Perez or someone of that ilk, maybe somebody coming up from NXT, I would have Bayley reign as a babyface for a while, and then use her veteran nous and experience and skill and popularity and all of that stuff to raise a heel up beneath her. Exactly what we've done with Lyra, but over on the heel side. Next, with the United States title, it's time to right the wrongs of SummerSlam. Look, I'm not gonna lie, I thought this was one of the absolute worst wrestling matches I've seen all year in a steel cage, which is never really a steel cage because they got 400 interferences every time these days for some reason. An absolute stinker between these two, but I don't think it was Jacob Fatu's fault, and I think he should still win the belt back from Solo Sikoa and his gang of NFT crypto, the MFTs. I think he should look. They should have done this at SummerSlam, but they didn't. They opted to prolong the heat in this storyline, which has quietly, in my view, become one of the worst things in WWE today. I would pivot away from that as soon as you can. Look, I understand the appeal of Solo as this cheeky guy. He's a scamp. He's not as serious as he used to be, all of this stuff. But come on, Jacob Fatu is extremely over. He deserves a longer run with this belt, and he can really make this belt into something greater than it currently is. So get it off Solo and put it on the big man. One of the more predictable entries on this list now, I've gone with AJ Styles dethroning Dominic Mysterio as Intercontinental Champion. Almost forgot the name of the belt there. That's really stupid. Look, we saw at SummerSlam very Eddie Guerrero match with the boots slipping off and Dominic escaping with the victory, all of that stuff. I think that sometimes the predictable outcome is the best outcome in wrestling. And look, if a Dominic Mysterio face turn isn't coming, it felt like it might be after WrestleMania where he was cheered like crazy, this is probably the way to go. There's been a lot of speculation over AJ's future over the past year or so, a lot of people thinking he might jump ship or anything like that. I don't think that was ever grounded in much factual stuff. I think that was mostly wishful thinking. I think he's going to be in WWE until the day he retires. So sometimes, you know, the good guy should just get back over the bad guy in the end after being screwed over so many times. So let's have AJ win this rivalry. Doesn't need to pretend he's a janitor or whatever, all the various disguises he's tried throughout this storyline. Just have him win the belt. Okay, we're closing in on the big four singles titles now in WWE, and in terms of dethroning Naomi, why not go with her Clash in Paris opponent, Stephanie Vaquer? I'm not saying you should do it immediately because that pay-per-view is next week or the week after, something like that. It's very soon. is my point. You probably want to have Naomi reign a little bit longer because she has that cachet and she's really over at the moment. There are plenty of good options for this spot as well. You could have Rhea Ripley or Io Sky go back every single time, of course. But Stephanie Vaquera is the rising star in WWE as far as being a singles wrestler goes. And I think she's destined to hold one of these top titles before long. Probably hold off a while on this, right? Probably have Naomi hold it at least through like the Rumble or something like that. If you want to continue down that route. But in terms of elevating a new star who's going to headline pay-per-views and have these big spotlight matches for years and years and years and years to come, I'd have Stephanie in that spot, at least by WrestleMania, so that when you get there, you can pit her against somebody really killer and just have an outrageous, awesome match. Up next, the WWE Women's title, currently held by Tiffany Stratton. There's been a couple of surprising retentions, I think, for Tiffany in 2025. A lot of people might have picked Charlotte Flair to win at WrestleMania. That was a popular prediction. And then Jade Cargill just the other week at SummerSlam as well. So she's hanging on. She's still the champion. And look, again, Tiffany, she's really young, right? She doesn't need to hold this belt forever because she's going to get it again. And if you want to give her a signature longer reign later down the line, you can do that. Although she's already had it for most of the year. So, you know, this is quite long already. But recent reporting suggests that Bianca Belair is on her way back to WWE sooner rather than later. She is the one I would have dethrone Tiffany here. I think that raises all kinds of interesting stuff with Jade because they have some unresolved issues following the Naomi turn and the big blow up of the big three. That creates an interesting story implication in terms of Jade going, hey, why have you got a belt? This isn't fair. You've been away for ages. You upset me with this Naomi stuff. Let's have a fight. It's a good basis to go on. There's all kinds of interesting things you can play with. But look, it's Bianca Belair. She's one of the best big match wrestlers in the company. She's awesome. She's had long title reigns before in the past, obviously, and proved that she can keep it up for ages and ages in terms of being over and still delivering really high quality work. For me, she's gone a little bit too long, Bianca has, without winning one of the big ones and holding it for a while. So this is what I would do. Second last belt, the World Heavyweight Championship, currently held by Seth Rollins. He cashed in, of course, on CM Punk after CM Punk beat Gunther, who's currently taking time off because he's got a bad nose or something like that. Look, ultimately, Punk has to win this storyline in the end, in my opinion. The good guy should usually win in the end in pro wrestling. The theme of this feud throughout the entire beginning, middle, and end, when it eventually comes, is Seth Rollins annoying the piss out of CM Punk. His whole MO during this whole thing as well has been, you, Phil Brooks, you don't get to be WWE champion because you left here and I stayed and all that stuff. That's been a key narrative through all of this. But after being annoyed, after being outdone, after being cashed in on, after being screwed over and all these other things, Punk should win this belt in the end. I would not water it down any. I would not do it in the four-way match that we have planned for Clash in Paris. I would do a singles match. I would even be tempted to pull out a gimmick match like Hell in a Cell. We saw the magic that Punk worked on that stipulation with Drew McIntyre just last year. Of course, the Cody Rhodes and Seth Rollins one is very highly thought of as well. So I think it's a match made in hell. In a cell. That's a terrible joke. Either way, this is the move. Punk should have the belt. Punk should pin Rollins clean. Probably don't want to do it for a little while. You probably want to have the Vision, the stable, being a bit more dominant for a while before the cracks start to show in that. But yeah, this is absolutely one I would be looking at for a major pay-per-view, maybe even WrestleMania. And finally, the WWE Championship, the big one. Is it undisputed? Have we added that word back to the title yet? I don't know, but what I do know is that I really want Sami Zayn to win this belt from Mr. Cody Rhodes. I like the popularly fantasy booked route of the Royal Rumble win for Sami and then beating Cody at WrestleMania, whatever. I think it would make for a really cool, rich, organic moment. Sami Zayn is the kind of guy who inspires that level of devotion. There's an authenticity to him that isn't always present at times in the main event, the big glossy, glitzy main event scene. And look, I think he's overdue it. I think the idea that somebody is deserving of a world champ, you deserve it, all of that stuff, sometimes it's a little played out, but in Sami's case, he's never held one of the big two in WWE. He deserves that moment, that spotlight, and that legacy-making run, because he's a Hall of Famer. He simply is. And look, I know there's a contingent out there who call him Sami Hogan, which is absurd, because I mean, I looked up before I came on here, he's lost like 70% of his matches this year. What are we doing with that nonsense? It doesn't make any damn sense. I swear to goodness, people just throw the word Hogan at anyone they don't like for whatever reason. Look, either way, it's Sami Zayn. Real ones know that Sami Zayn is awesome. And I think there's a really clever program you could build here. Not outright turning Cody heel, but playing into those aspects of his character to put sympathy on Sami. It's good stuff across the board, and it's a bit of a different type of WrestleMania main event storyline compared to the stuff we've seen in recent years, which has worked in some cases, Cody versus Roman, and not so much in others. Travis Scott. But thank you for joining me for this video here today. Let me know who you think should dethrone WWE's champions in the comment section below. Check out the video that's on your screen right now. It's a good time, and I'll see you later. Bye.